Hello and welcome to the third installment of U.S. History Review. I am Mr. Simonetti, the inspiration for Theo from the Little Einsteins.
And this is Mr. Antinoro, the inspiration for the mathematical genius in numbers.
You good in math? I never knew.
Yeah, you learn something new every day, huh?
What's 44 plus 77?
I saved that for the TV show.
I don't blame you. Alright, so then what's the first thing that happened? We ended off with Reconstruction, the end of the Civil War. How did that impact the country?
Well, during the Civil War, we needed war supplies to defeat the Confederate States.
But where are you going to make all these big war supplies and these massive orders of weapons and...
In factories, of course.
Did we have factories back then?
Well, we had some factories, but not that many, or not as many as then would be built during the Civil War and after the Civil War.
So if you were going to build a factory, Mr. Antinoro, where would you put it?
In the cities.
Why?
Well, who lives in the cities? Many people, especially immigrants that could move there and live in the cities and work in the factories for cheap labor.
Oh. And the government didn't do anything about this? They didn't make them raise their earnings?
Well, at this time, the government practices laissez-faire, which means that the government left business alone. Now, do you think that's a good idea, Mr. Simonetti?
I mean, I could see it having some pros and cons. I mean, businesses then have to pay less taxes. They can probably expand and create new jobs, but then I could see businesses becoming maybe greedy and corrupt.
Yes.
And maybe not taking care of their workers like they should.
Yes, and that's a great segue into the next slide.
Again, that's why I'm the king of segues.
You are. Yes, you are.
So, what happens because of this laissez-faire attitude?
Well, we have big businessmen like Carnegie and Rockefeller, okay, making a lot of money, okay, and they were successful businessmen. They increased productivity and came up with new methods of producing steel and refining oil. But at the same time, they were also known as robber barons because in a lot of ways they used ruthless business practices. For example, they created monopolies and trusts.
I love Monopoly. I play that every Friday night.
But we're not talking about that monopoly. We're talking about monopolies where one company or a few companies control an entire industry.
And what happens if you control an entire industry?
Well, the competition goes down, and when there's no competition, the company can charge as high a price as they want to.
But that's the whole point of the game Monopoly.
Yes, but it's not very fair to small businessmen now, is it?
Well, why not?
Or to consumers.
Well, how does that hurt me?
Well, because you have to pay very high prices for goods, and you wouldn't be allowed into that industry because there was no way you could compete with a Rockefeller or a Carnegie.
So besides controlling the industry, did big businesses control anything else?
Well, there was a lot of talk at the time that maybe these businessmen were even more powerful than the president. Do you believe that?
I don't believe that. Nobody's more powerful than the president.
Well, there were cartoons even that showed Rockefeller had our government in the palm of his hand.
But how could he do that? Don't we, the people, vote and elect our senators, our representatives?
Well, at the time, in fact, you'd be shocked to hear this. We didn't even elect our senators.
What are you talking about, Willis?
Not until the 17th Amendment will we actually get to elect our senators. So corruption was high at the time. There were poor working conditions for workers in the factories, long hours and low wages.
Didn't little kids work?
Yes, little kids even worked.
Wow, that's crazy.
So they didn't go to school.
Where did all these people live, though? If they have no money, I mean, they can't afford to live in a house.
Yes, they lived in tenements in the cities, these urban areas that were characterized by slums, poverty, pollution, and again, the government did not do much to clean up these areas and make conditions better for the poor.
If the government didn't do anything to fix it, then who did?
Muckrakers.
Muckraker? That doesn't sound too appealing.
Well, what these muckrakers did, they were writers who exposed all of society's problems. And the most famous ones that you should be familiar with there, students, are Upton Sinclair, who wrote the book The Jungle. He exposed the unsanitary conditions in the meat factories.
What do you mean, unsanitary meat factories?
Well, when we eat meat today, we don't have to worry about dying.
I only eat grade A meat.
At the time, meats were filled with all sorts of stuff, being grounded up and put into sausage and other types of meat. And Upton Sinclair exposed it for the country to realize what was going on in these factories.
Oh, wow. But there's so many other problems. Nobody else exposed anything but me?
Well, funny you ask. They exposed a lot of other problems as well. Jacob Riis, another famous muckraker, took pictures of the slums in New York City, and he exposed how the poor were living in urban areas.
Wow.
And there were a whole bunch of other muckrakers too, but can you imagine how people felt when they read these books, Mr. Simonetti?
Well, I'm surprised they even knew how to learn and read since they all had to work since they were little kids.
True. Well, that's why Jacob Riis's book, filled with pictures, really exposed a lot of what was going on. And in fact, well, I'll segue this time if that's okay.
Well, that's what I'm here for, but give it a try.
Okay. The president himself read The Jungle and was shocked by what he saw.
Who was the president?
Well, the great Teddy Roosevelt, TR.
TR? Oh, he created that square deal, right?
Yes, he did. The square deal. And Roosevelt, he becomes our first progressive president. Okay, and by progressive, we mean he wants to improve conditions for people in the country and make reforms, important reforms like the ones you see up on the board.
Oh, you mean like progressive, like moving forward, making progress?
Yes. Oh, now you're catching on.
I'm a quick learner.
And he passes the Meat Inspection Act, which leads to consumer protection and other acts as well, like the Pure Food and Drug Act. He also becomes known as a trust buster.
What do you mean, like a Ghostbuster?
No, not a Ghostbuster, a trust buster.
Wait, so he lies a lot? I don't get it. What is a trust buster?
He busts or breaks up the trusts. Now, the trusts, if you remember, were those monopolies that were forming that tried to eliminate competition.
Oh, those are the people who raised prices.
Yeah.
So what happened because he made them illegal?
Well, by busting these trusts and going after these bad trusts, breaking them up, it led to more competition and lower prices for consumers.
That's all fine and dandy, but whenever I watch a movie, like Night at the Museum, why is he always riding a horse?
Well, he was a famous war hero during the Spanish-American War, part of the Rough Riders. But he was also a famous hunter. He loved famous for being a hunter. He loved hunting, and he loved the outdoors, and he realized if we don't conserve the environment, it will be lost forever. So he also became really our first conservationist president.
Is that why he's on Mount Rushmore?
It's one of the major reasons why he's on Mount Rushmore.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So, I mean, he seems pretty awesome. What about, he helped us in our country a lot, domestically, but did he do anything with foreign countries?
Yeah, people consider him to be a great president, especially for his foreign policy, because he got things done in terms of foreign policy, and he exerted U.S. power throughout the world.
Anywhere in specific?
Well, okay, let's go back a little bit. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Before Teddy Roosevelt is president, okay, we go to war against Spain, largely because of yellow journalism.
Now, what is yellow journalism?
Yellow journalism is when
people call you yellow a lot, Mr. Antinoro.
No,
and
that's
I don't
not
know
true.
why they're calling you yellow. It's a color. They call me. I never get called a color. They say I got a lot of green, but they never call me yellow.
That's not true. He's starting rumors again, Mr. Simonetti. But back to yellow journalism. Yellow journalism was when newspaper writers would exaggerate reports. And they exaggerated reports against Spain. They claimed that Spain blew up one of our ships called the USS Maine. And
where did that happen?
Well, that happened in Cuba, of course.
Oh, Cuba? That's why we don't talk to Cuba today?
No, that's later when we get to communism.
Oh, I can't wait for that screencast.
Yeah, that'll be coming up soon. In the next few screencasts. But in this case, Spanish-American War, we go to war against Spain to try to win independence for the Cubans. But by beating Spain, we also win their territory, such as Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Guam, and now we become an imperial power. Do you know what it means to become an imperial power?
Oh my God, I've never heard that word in my life, Mr. Antinoro. What does it mean, imperial?
It means when a stronger country dominates weaker countries. Now that may seem kind of strange, no? That we're dominating smaller, weaker countries.
Why would we want a weak country?
Well, we would want a weak country because they may have natural resources.
What is a natural resource? I've never heard of this before.
You never heard of natural resources?
You keep saying it, but you don't give me any examples. How will I learn?
You never heard of natural resources? You should have learned that in global.
I didn't take global.
Oh, okay. So let me catch up. Natural resources are things like gold and rubber and oil, okay?
Oh, those are things that are worth a lot of money.
Yes, they are. But besides natural resources we can have from these weaker countries, we could also sell them things. That's what we call new markets. And we could also use their lands for naval bases as well.
So it makes a lot of sense to be an imperial country.
It does, but many people criticized us because here we are, a country that's all about freedom, right, and independence. Remember that lesson that we did a few screencasts ago about independence?
Didn't we win our? Yeah, weren't we controlled by a strong country
Yeah.
at one point? It was Britain, I believe.
Yes, Britain controlled us at one time, and we didn't like it, but here we are now controlling weaker countries.
We're kind of hypocritical.
Yes, you can say that.
Well, I mean, are there any countries or areas of the world in particular that Roosevelt took over or that really wanted to control?
Yes, well, Roosevelt controlled and enforced U.S. might, particularly in Latin America. Now, do you know where Latin America is?
Isn't that somewhere in Latin town?
No, and don't say, too, that they speak Latin.
I thought Latin was a dead language. Why would anyone speak it?
Oh, see, okay, so you do remember some stuff.
Yeah, from what I learned in high school.
Okay. So let's go back now to Latin America. Latin America is the countries below the United States in the Western Hemisphere. And Teddy Roosevelt, not only did he support them-
Wait. Didn't James Monroe tell Europe to stay out of the Western Hemisphere?
Yes, he did. And they were threatening to come back again and try to win money back and control some countries in Latin America again. So Teddy Roosevelt, knowing who he was, what do you think he did?
I'm assuming he protected Latin America.
Yes, you're right. He protected Latin America, and he told Europe to stay out, according to the Monroe Doctrine, and he said the U.S., this is his corollary, the U.S. should police Latin America. Now, do you think that's a good idea, the U.S. would police Latin America?
I don't know. Did they have a lot of crime there that they need police?
We don't mean police like that.
What do you mean by police?
We mean police that he would make sure that they were behaving correctly towards other countries, that they were paying back their debts to countries, and they were not interfering, especially with our economic interests or our investments.
No, I guess it makes sense when you explain it like that. But didn't Teddy Roosevelt, isn't his famous saying, I took the canal and I let Congress debate?
Yes.
What, was he getting a root canal or something? I don't understand what he means.
We don't mean those kinds of canals. We mean a canal like a man-made waterway, which we built through Panama.
Oh, didn't that cut our travel in half when we wanted to trade with the other side of the country?
Yes, not only trade, but it also increased our naval might. Now, why would that increase our naval might?
It makes it easier to travel to and from both sides of the country.
Yes, and our ships can protect each coast quite quickly now because of the canal.
Wow, so, I mean, we seem to be taking over all these countries. Do we have any conflicts with any countries around this time period?
Well, soon after this time period, okay, we get involved in World War I. Now, that was not our original intention, right? What do you think Washington would have done when World War I began?
I remember he said in his farewell address, stay neutral, don't form alliances.
And that is exactly what Woodrow Wilson did as president. He tried to keep us neutral at first. We continued trading with both sides. But do you think Germany liked us trading so much with Great Britain, who was their enemy?
I wouldn't like that very much.
No, neither would I.
What did they do about it?
Well, Germany, using their U-boats or their submarines, started sinking our ships. In particular, they sunk the British liner, the Lusitania, which led to many American deaths, including women and children. And President Wilson and the Americans started to view the Germans as perhaps our enemy.
That's pretty messed up. Did they do anything else that provoked us?
Yeah, well, did they do anything else? They also tried to get Mexico to become their ally, and they were going to try to win land back from us and give it to Mexico.
Wow, that's messed up.
Yeah, that's really messed up.
That's messed up. Well, what happened because of that?
Well, the U.S. declares war, and we go to war. Woodrow Wilson creates his 14 points. These were, how many points you think?
15?
14.
Well, wait, I thought it was 13. Didn't we not agree to one of the points?
Well, that's right. The last point was about the League of Nations, an international peacekeeping body.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, but would you believe the U.S. never joined the League of Nations?
Why not?
Well, because we wanted to go back to Washington's advice, which was isolationism.
Oh, so if we got involved in the League of Nations, we could get drawn into other wars.
Exactly.
Oh, now I understand.